Do you ever wonder why it's so easy to lose yourself in video games, social media, or binge-watching TV for hours? But sitting down to study for just 30 minutes feels like an impossible task. Or why working on your side hustle for an extra hour seems so unappealing even though you know it could change your future. It all comes down to one thing: dopamine. Some people have no problem focusing on their studies, hitting the gym, or working on passion projects regularly. But why? What makes certain people more motivated to take on difficult tasks while others struggle? And most importantly, is there a way to make hard things feel easier? Let's break it down. But before we continue, if you're serious about leveling up your mindset and productivity, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Stimulating Minds. I create content that will help you stay motivated, improve your mental health, and build better habits. Now, let's get into it. The power of dopamine. What it really does. Dopamine is often called the pleasure molecule, but that's not entirely accurate. Instead, dopamine is the chemical that drives desire and motivation. It pushes us to take action in pursuit of a reward. To understand just how powerful dopamine is, let's look at a fascinating experiment scientists conducted on rats. Researchers implanted electrodes in the rats' brains and stimulated their reward system every time they pressed a lever. The result? The rats became obsessed. They pressed the lever repeatedly, for hours on end, even ignoring food and sleep, until they collapsed from exhaustion. Then the scientists flipped the experiment. They blocked dopamine in the rats' brains. The results were shocking. The rats became so unmotivated that they wouldn't even get up to drink water. They weren't paralyzed. They just had no desire to do anything. Now you might be thinking, well, that's just rats. That doesn't apply to me. But in reality, dopamine works the same way in humans. Your brain prioritizes activities based on how much dopamine they release. The more dopamine something triggers, the more motivated you are to do it again. For example, before you eat junk food, your brain releases dopamine because it anticipates pleasure. Before you check social media, dopamine is released because you expect to see a notification or a new post. Before you play video games, dopamine surges in anticipation of winning or leveling up. But here's the catch. Your brain doesn't care if an activity is actually good for you. It only cares about how much dopamine it gets. That's why people keep scrolling social media or playing video games, even when they know they should be doing something more productive. And this is also why people struggle to find motivation for things like studying, exercising, or working on a side project. These activities simply don't release as much dopamine as highly stimulating activities like video games or social media. The problem is dopamine tolerance. Your brain is designed to maintain balance, a process called homeostasis. Just like how your body adjusts to cold weather by shivering, your brain adjusts to high levels of dopamine by lowering your sensitivity to it. This is called dopamine tolerance. For example, someone who drinks alcohol regularly needs more and more to feel the same buzz. The same thing happens with dopamine. If you're constantly flooding your brain with high dopamine activities, social media, video games, junk food, binge-watching Netflix, your brain adapts. It reduces the number of dopamine receptors, making you less sensitive to everyday pleasures. The result? Normal activities like reading a book or working on a project feel boring and unmotivating. You crave instant gratification and avoid anything that requires effort. You feel restless when you're not getting your usual dopamine fix. This is why drug addicts struggle to enjoy everyday life after quitting. Their brains are so used to extreme dopamine spikes that normal life feels dull. And while most people aren't addicted to drugs, many are addicted to constant stimulation, whether it's social media, video games, or other high dopamine habits. So, what can you do about it? To reset your brain's sensitivity to dopamine, you need to reduce your exposure to high dopamine activities, at least temporarily. This process is called a dopamine detox. Here's how it works. Step 1. Take 1 full day off from high dopamine activities. For 1 full day, avoid anything that overstimulates your brain. That means no social media, no video games, no junk food, no music or movies, and no internet browsing. Instead, embrace boredom. You're only allowed to do low dopamine activities like going for a walk, meditating, journaling on paper, not on your phone, and reflecting on your goals. At first you'll feel restless and bored, and that's the point. You're letting your dopamine receptors reset. Step 2. Reduce high dopamine activities long term. After your detox day, start limiting your high dopamine habits. Pick 1 day per week to completely avoid your biggest dopamine trigger, whether it's social media, gaming, or something else. Use high dopamine activities as a reward, not a default. Prioritize low dopamine work first. For example, I personally use a work reward system. For every hour of focused work, I earn 15 minutes of a high dopamine activity, like browsing the internet. I only allow myself to indulge at the end of the day, never before starting work. This way, I stay productive while still enjoying the things I love. Take control of your dopamine. Dopamine is not the enemy. It's what motivates us to achieve our goals. But if you let it control you, it will keep you stuck in instant gratification mode, making it nearly impossible to focus on long-term success. The key is to be intentional about where you get your dopamine. Are you going to let it come from endless scrolling and distractions? Or will you train your brain to crave progress and personal growth? The choice is yours. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe to Stimulating Minds for more content on motivation, mental health, and self-improvement. And don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Now go take action. Your future self will thank you.